Alright guys, let's go ahead and talk about world building. This is one that's going to help you out with starting off your game, and this is going to be just a simple little village that we're going to do. And the village is going to have a surrounding countryside that we're going to use to give our guys a place to go and have their adventures. We're using the inside out strategy, where we start with small things and then move outwards. There's some stuff we're going to need for this. For starts, we're going to include some writing utensils. I'm using a pen to make this easier to see, but I recommend that you use a pencil. We're also going to need some paper in copious supply. Now, because we're working with 5th edition and the books aren't out for it yet, I'm going to be using a Dungeon Master guide from the 2nd edition, and also a guide to Faerun from the 3rd edition to help me keep track of what I'm doing exactly. So, let's talk about the choices that we have to make about this place. It has a place where it is, the terrain, the kind of people that live there, what it does, why it is there, and then finally, what it does for your game, why your players are bothering to go there. So, what kinds of terrains do you like? Maybe you're about the ocean, as I am, maybe you like mountains, but you gotta choose some places generally accessible to most player characters. If you put it under the sea, you're gonna need that water breathing to get there, so we'll go with the forest for a start. Now, who lives inside of a forest? We got elves, we got humans, we got no, not dwarves, they're mountain people, right? That's a thing. Yeah, that's a thing. Gnomes, yeah, sure. Now, gnomes and elves, kind of rare, so we're gonna use humans here. Now, we can think about what kinds of jobs there are, and in our 2nd edition Game Master's Guide, there's this awesome list of player professions, which I really hope they include in the new Game Master's Guide. As you can see, it is extensive and profoundly useful for this kind of stuff, because you can't think of all this stuff on your own every time. We're going to be looking at laborers for the most part, people who chop down the wood, and we got a lot of wood lying around, maybe we got a carpenter or two. But as you can see, there are all kinds of jobs on here, and you could have maybe a eccentric old clockmaker who lives there. We gotta make a decision about what the function of this town is. Why is it here in the world? It's humans, they live in a forest. Why do humans go to the forest? They come for wood, sure. Maybe they're here for religious enlightenment. Perhaps they are sent here to guard this wood by some larger empire or something like that. Well, I don't want to talk about religion today. Let's stick with the lumberjacks. Then we gotta make a decision about what is the function of this town in the terms of your game. Now you gotta have a place where characters can learn about the adventures that they can go on. They gotta have some place to buy and sell goods. They're gonna need healing services when they get banged up between their adventures. And just to keep it interesting, let's make sure that it's not a perfectly safe haven. Now, it's a forest. We're just going to keep it classic and go with an evil sheriff. And we might need a priest to do those healing services. Plot hooks, we'll put it in... No, not a tavern. Looks stupid. So, we've decided that we're looking at a place that's in a forest. Our village is peopled by human beings. Their economy is based on lumber. And in the terms of the game Dungeons & Dragons, this town exists to serve as the place where your characters are going to have the opportunity to rest between their adventures. So, let's talk about some of those people that we're going to need to populate this town. We need somebody for the plot hooks. We'll use the overseer who runs the lumberyard. We're going to need our villain, in this case our evil sheriff that we already decided about. We'll also need that person who's doing the healing, and someone who makes the arrangements for the sleeping place. For the sleeping arrangements, they can hang out with the lumberjacks. And for the healer, we'll just use a good old priest. Nah, priestess. Yeah. Add some women. Women are strong. So, we have all our functions in terms of meta and in terms of world fulfilled with these key characters. Now, these are the people that we think of as key personalities. There are other people that are in the town, and we care about them when their lives are lost to orc raids and stuff like that, but for the most part, these are the only people that we want to talk to. And we can make some decisions about what kinds of people they are. So our evil sheriff, for example, he can be a greedy old dwarf. And that just gives him a good information that we can use to work with him off the cuff if we need to talk to him. So let's start with some mapping. And we'll also name the town while we're at it. Lumbertown, Lubbin. Yes. Now, Lubbin is a town, and Lubbin lies along a road. Now, we don't care about the things that are on the other sides of the road right now. For the terms of your beginning adventure, all we need is Lubbin and its immediate surrounding countryside. You can add in parts of an existing game world, you can add in stuff from a written adventure module, you can use whatever you want for that stuff, and you can continue to build on your world as well. This is called the inside-out strategy. Now, we're going to need a forest, so they'll have lumber to jack. And we'll call it the Deep Woods, just to make it easy, but just a little bit menacing sounding. Not too much, just a little. In the Deep Woods, they're going to need a place to go off and do their adventures. So we'll go ahead and mark the dungeon here. Now, you don't have to make up the dungeon on your own. We're going to talk about doing that in another video, but you can also make use of the stuff that you get out of adventure modules that you buy at the store. For our purposes, we're just going to call it the Forgotten Crypt. So, now we got a countryside for our adventurers to wander around in. Let's talk about the town itself in some more detail, because when you have your players going to town, they're going to ask, where can I go, what can I do? The easiest way to organize that, I find, is to make use of a map. So, we're going to go ahead and add in structures that correspond to our key personalities. We've got a barracks so they can go and get their sleep. We've got a general store for them to go and sell and purchase goods. We're going to need also that shrine for when they get banged up in battle. So we'll go ahead and add that right here. And as you can see, we're sort of getting a town square emerging from it. And in the town square is, of course, where that jerk of a sheriff is going to keep his offices. So we now have all of our key personalities covered, so we can start thinking about the other things. And here's where we add in those other people in the settlement who live there but are really just sort of background noise until they're slaughtered by orcs or something. Now, because this is a medieval settlement, it can't do without some water. So we'll just give it a happy little well right here. And wells have dark parts and rope. Finally, remember, this town is here because of the lumberjacks. So if we don't include the lumber mill, there is no reason for this town to be here. So just go ahead and add that in right there. At this point, we can start thinking about details. Maybe we have a happy little tree who lives down on the south end of town there. And maybe we got another one up on the north side. We can add as many happy little trees as we want. You want to do just sparing stuff with this, because while you want your maps to be beautiful and fun to look at, you don't want to just totally gross them out with details that become confusing to use at the game table. We just got a lazy river right here. Meanders down, decides he wants to go two ways. Yeah, he's a happy little river. And we'll go ahead and label this one as Lubbin. Fix that B. Thanks. Now up in the corner here is a great place for us to go ahead and put our key personalities. We got our overseer, we'll call him Hamish. We're also going to have our priestess. Now this is a really great opportunity for you to make some decisions about the rest of your world without moving outside of Lubbin. So Valeria, our priestess, she's got to worship a god of some kind in order to do her healing magic and so on. We're going to use Sehanin just because that's the first one that comes to mind, but our 3rd edition Forgotten Realms guide is also a great place to look for some gods, or you could use Loki, Thor, whatever you wanted to do. Finally, we're going to go ahead and make some notes about that jerk of a sheriff. We'll call him Broderick. Not a very dwarfy name, but he's not really a very good dwarf. He lives in the forest, for God's sake. And for the record, he's evil, which we care about if we ever find some paladins around the area. So, if we take it all together, we have here our first village in its surrounding countryside. Stack in an adventure and you're all set.